Welcome to World Talk Brief. So, back in early 2026, the world was basically holding its breath. A diplomatic crisis over Greenland was threatening to just completely spiral out of control. And it was this moment that, it really exposed the raw nerves of a shifting global order. So the big question is, how did we even get there? Well, we're going to unpack this whole story in 5 parts. We'll kick things off with how the new administration set the stage, then we'll look at the massive defense project right at the heart of this conflict. After that, we'll dive headfirst into the crisis itself, see the surprising turn of events that cooled things down, and finally, we'll explore what this whole episode tells us about the pretty fragmented world we're living in today.
All right, so let's set the scene. The second Trump administration kicks off on January 20th, 2025, and boom, right away, there's just this flurry of executive actions. They were designed to immediately reshape U.S. policy.
And right out of the gate, foreign policy gets a major shakeup. This America First directive comes down, and it basically tells the State Department to, rethink everything. Every policy, every program, every single person. All of it had to be seen through this really strict lens of national interest.
At the same time, you've got these sweeping orders unleashed to tackle immigration and border security. This kicked off a massive effort to build up physical barriers and really ramp up removal operations. And this is all happening from day one.
And look, this inward-looking focus, it wasn't just for foreign policy. Domestically, there was this really rapid push to dismantle diversity, equity, and inclusion programs. DEI, right across the federal government. And it was a clear signal to the private sector that they should probably follow suit.
So get this, in just a little over a year, the administration issued a staggering 408 executive actions. And this wasn't just, busy work. The sheer volume was the message. This was a presidency that was absolutely determined to reshape the country at lightning speed, leaving zero room for ambiguity about its new direction.
Okay, so central to this whole new agenda was this piece of technology that was, it was as ambitious as it was controversial. A massive new missile defense system.
They called it the Golden Dome. And the idea was pretty wild. It was envisioned as the shield for America, using satellites in space to shoot down missiles right as they're taking off, during their most vulnerable moment. The goal? Stop a threat before it even gets a chance to leave enemy airspace.
But here's the thing. The ambition of this project was matched only by the massive controversy over its cost. The White House put the price tag at about $175 billion. But the Congressional Budget Office, they came back with an estimate that it could soar to nearly 5 times that amount. That huge gap really just underscores how contested this whole thing was from the very start.
So this big push for a new defense system and the critical strategic location it needed, it was on a direct collision course with geopolitics. And the flashpoint? It turned out to be the massive, strategically vital island of Greenland.
And man, January 2026 was just a total whirlwind. It all started with some diplomatic pressure, but within weeks, just weeks, it escalated to direct threats of economic tariffs and even military action. This put the U.S. on a collision course with some of its closest allies.
The administration's stance was, it was completely uncompromising. The message was crystal clear. This isn't a quest, it's a demand, and it's being framed as a matter of non-negotiable national security. And the response from Denmark and Greenland? It was just as resolute. Their message, which they repeated over and over, was pretty simple. Security is one thing, sure, but our sovereignty is not for sale. And just like that, you have a really tense diplomatic standoff.
So just as this whole crisis reached a boiling point, tariffs were looming, tensions were at their highest in decades, the tone just shifted dramatically. And it happened at the annual World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland.
Yeah, in a pretty sudden reversal, President Trump backed away from the military threats. He then announced that he had, and I quote, formed the framework of a future deal with respect to Greenland after a meeting with NATO's Secretary General. A framework, right? But what exactly was this framework? Because as the details started to leak out, it became pretty obvious that the U.S. and its allies had 2 completely different interpretations of what had actually been agreed upon.
Look at this. You have 2 starkly different realities. On one side, you have the U.S. claiming it had secured total military access and basically a green light for the Golden Dome. But on the other side, you've got Danish, Greenlandic, and NATO officials all insisting that sovereignty was never even discussed. They're saying the talks were about broader Arctic security, and then you get this sharp reminder from Greenland's leaders, nothing about us without us.
Now, it's really important to remember that this whole Greenland incident didn't just happen in a vacuum.
It was a symptom of these much broader shifts that were shaking the entire global landscape back in 2026.
So when analysts looked at the world in 2026, they saw a picture of growing fragmentation. You had the US acting much more assertively on the world stage, while Europe, on the other hand, appeared politically weakened. And this lack of confidence in the traditional alliances, it just fueled a global trend of rearmament, and you started seeing economic weapons like tariffs being used more and more to achieve strategic goals.
So why does any of this matter? Well, it's because the Greenland crisis wasn't some isolated incident. It was a microcosm of this new global landscape, a world of really transactional diplomacy where historic alliances were being seriously tested and, well, raw national interest was king. And so, the Greenland crisis left the entire world with this lingering fundamental question, one that was suddenly brought into very sharp focus for everyone. When the old rules are being rewritten, who gets to hold the pen? Subscribe to World Talk Brief for more clear, thoughtful explanations. World Talk Brief, news explained without the noise.